Thank you, Shireen, and thank everybody for being here. I'm honored to be here. And in a way, I feel like an interloper here. I'm from Queens. I lived the first 30 years of my life in New York. I went to Queens College. This is the fourth time I've been in this building ever. And actually the third time I've actually been in the same place as Jeff Goldfarb, who is like one of my closest friends now. The depth of resonance of Jeff's connections to people over time and space. I knew about this, but I didn't know about it the way I'm experiencing it through what everyone has said. You know, teachers, colleagues, students, just a wide range of people that Jeff has touched, Jeff has taught, Jeff has worked with, and Jeff has inspired. And it's inspiring to me. And one of the things I know about Jeff is that in addition to him being a scholar of the first rank, and in addition to him being someone who not only writes about the politics of small things, but it cultivates good small things. There are also really bad small things, and Jeff knows that too, but he cultivates good small things. He also is someone with a certain vision. And I don't mean to say that small things and vision are inconsistent. They're not, obviously. We've heard from people who are speaking in a visionary way about small things. But Jeff is also in another way a kind of an institutionalist. And it's been very clear to me that, as someone who really doesn't, I don't know a lot of you. I don't know a lot about the New School, except what I read in Judith Friedlander's book and like what I projected into the New School as someone who once wrote a book about Hannah Arendt, But Jeff has been an institution builder here. I know that that's true. And I know he's played an important role in a number of programs and institutions and in the sociology department, and been a voice of reason. And that's why Jonathan Fanton is here. And that's why Ira Katznelson was here. And I just want to, that's really impressive, the range of commitments. Okay. So Claire Potter, who I got to know through Jeff and through Public Seminar, and also became close with and worked very closely with. Last year, Claire invited me and a couple of other people to write short tributes to Jeff in Public Seminar. And so I did. And I'm basically going to present what I wrote. I assume most of you have not read it. I don't really just read in a rote way anyway. I'll interrupt myself occasionally, but I'll also try to be very concise. And the piece that I wrote is called A Scholar for Our Times, Friendship and the Substance of Hope. It's not very long, and it's a tribute to Jeff, but I think it's a tribute to Jeff in the spirit of his deep intellectual and political commitments. It's not just some bullshit thing about like Jeff's a great guy, which would be fine too, but that's not what I'm going to do. Yeah. In fact, I'm not even sure he's such a great guy. I'm talking about Aristotelian friendship. I barely know this guy as a person. That's not true. We talk like every week for hours but whatever. Anyway, two going together are better able both to think and to act. It's a quote from the Nicomachean Ethics, with which I lead this piece. And there's just a little bit about me at the beginning, explaining how I got to know Jeff. So forgive me for that. It's only a paragraph. I don't want to talk about me. I was just starting to wind down my tenure as editor-in-chief of Perspectives on Politics when I had which is a political science journal of the American Political Science Association, when I had my first actual conversation with Jeff Goldfarb. I had just published a lead editorial essay entitled Toward a More Public Political Science, and I was looking for a good public outlet for a short piece I had written on the shocking disco fire in Bucharest that was threatening and eventually brought down the Romanian government of then Prime Minister Victor Ponta. Vaguely aware of the existence of an online website called Public Seminar, I sent Jeff Goldfarb, its editor, my piece. He immediately responded with excitement, and within a few days it was published. Little did I know at that moment that this would be the start of a friendship that would become a defining aspect of my intellectual and political life. Like, really, Jeff is by far my closest colleague. I mean, I've only known him for a few years. He's by far my closest colleague. Like, anything that matters to me, I share with him. We edit each other's work. It's quite extraordinary, and I'm a little bit teary-eyed as I just say what I said. To proceed, I had actually encountered Jeff on the page years before, in 1989, when I read his book, Beyond Glasnost, The Post-Totalitarian Mind. That book had a profound effect on my thinking. And since most of what I do involves thinking, it had a profound effect on my life. I still consider it one of the most important books written on the experience of totalitarianism and post-totalitarianism in Eastern Europe. Jeff's study combines cultural sociology, intellectual and political history, and contemporary political analysis. The writings of Havel, Michnik, Conrad, Harasti, and their colleagues came alive on the book's pages. They came alive to me. And the perspective offered there stimulated and helped to shape my own engagement with these figures, influencing both my teaching and my scholarly writing. In fact, I try to remember, like, I'm going to be 65 in a few weeks. I'm not quite as old as Jeff just yet, but I'm older than a lot of people here. And especially in post-COVID times, it's hard to remember when you did what. And I think I had read some Kundera before I know I'd read some Kundera before I had read Jeff's book, but I don't think I even read any out of Michnik before I read your book. I think, maybe. Anyway, I want to credit you with that, whether or not you deserve the credit. Yes. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff Goldfarb. Rereading the book now on the occasion of Jeff's retirement, two things about Beyond Glasnost stand out. The first is the book's combination of prescience and political wisdom. It makes no reference to what came to be called the revolutions of 1989, and with good reason, because it came out weeks before those revolutionary events unfolded. And yet, in so many ways, the book both anticipated these events and furnishes us with an indispensable guide to them. The book's central theme, the cultural and political openings made possible by Mikhail Gorbachev's Glasnost, points toward the possibility announced in its very title, the unfolding of developments beyond Glasnost. Jeff treats this possibility with nuance and care. He takes seriously the real changes introduced in the Soviet bloc by Gorbachev and also the real limits of these changes. He regards Gorbachev's Glasnost as a response to a long gestating independent civil society in Eastern Europe and as an official policy of openness and publicity that it is an official imitation of the struggles and accomplishments of subjugated people. Those words were Jeff's in the book. But he also considers the possibility that the political changes set in motion will generate further change. This is, I'm quoting now, it's a short paragraph from the book. It is, and again, weeks before, it is not appropriate to predict which way East Europe and the Soviet Union will go. It suffices to emphasize that they are moving to a greater and lesser degrees within a post-totalitarian situation, epitomized by solidarity. This new situation is defined by a new language and autonomous public action. It involves changes in the relationships between force and reason and between official and unofficial life, and undermining of the legitimation through disbelief and an unlocking of previously untapped cultural and political energies. That was Jeff writing, I guess, in 1988 or 1987 about what was to come. The changes that would erupt within weeks of the book's publication and that would unfold for decades to come only confirmed the depth of the book's analysis, the accuracy of its identification of new openings, and the wisdom of its author's rhetorical caution about the unpredictability of political outcomes. At the same time, the book's closing paragraph is astonishingly resonant today, more than 3 decades later, as Eastern Europe, then a potential laboratory of liberal democracy, has become a laboratory of illiberal democracy, xenophobia, and authoritarianism. And now I'm quoting from that final paragraph of the book. In Central Europe, a fertile ground for totalitarianism, where intolerance, suspicious jealousies, and hatreds have been the material of politics, where modern barbarism reached its peak, a new democratic political culture is emerging. As should be clear to the reader by now, I have no confidence that this political culture must, in the end, prevail. Even stronger neo-totalitarian states may well emerge. We can, though, have hope, and our hopes will have greater substance if we learn from those who have experienced and moved beyond totalitarianism. And Jeff learned, and he taught many others, including me. The possibility of new dark times is recognized in Beyond Glasnost, even as the book is buoyed by a sense of hope and a commitment to keep the spirit of freedom alive. And this brings me to the second thing about the book that stands out, its current timeliness and the extent to which it speaks to the ongoing importance of Jeff Goldfarb's life work and the consistency of the values that underlay his commitment both to public sociology and to public engagement. Jeff's very first words in Beyond Glasnost are, unsurprisingly to anyone who knows him, in his acknowledgments. Jeff is characteristically generous in thanking the many people whose support and collaboration helped to shape his thinking, from his dear friend Adam Michnick to his beloved partner in life, Naomi Goldfarb, who I've never met before. Hi. Yeah, in person, absolutely. Yeah, you're always present. But like his friendship, Jeff's generosity is not a mere personal sentimentality. It is also a form of Aristotelian philia in the best and most civic of senses, an enactment of the kinds of connections and reciprocities that give meaning to life and that make public action possible. These are the very first words written by Jeff in his book. So I'm quoting now from literally the first words in his acknowledgments. And most books begin with acknowledgments. But this is how Jeff begins, and most books don't begin the way Jeff begins, just like most people don't behave the way Jeff behaves. I began this inquiry as a continuation of a conversation I had in the private apartment of an extraordinary man in Warsaw. I continued and developed the inquiry as I was challenged during serious and sometimes contentious discussions with my colleagues in New York at the New School for Social Research. My goal in this inquiry is not to reveal some political or social scientific truth, but to stimulate further critical discussions about sustaining the ideals of democracy, culture, and justice beyond totalitarian certitudes. Those are the first words of the book and the first book of Jeff's that I read. So this is my first encounter with Jeff. Those words: conversation, dialogue, collaboration, other people, the idea of other people, and also specific, concrete, actual other people, each of whom is a distinct person. These things define everything of value for Jeff, I believe. And by the way, I think his family is part of that. I mean, conversation, dialogue, collaboration, other people, certainly. Yeah, okay. What follows these words is a paragraph thanking Michnick for his friendship and his example. And saying that he hopes that this work is a further continuation of the Democracy Seminar. In this paragraph, Jeff tells his readers so much about himself and what is important to him, and also forecasts his future efforts that indeed encompass all three of the modes of being analyzed by his hero, Hannah Arendt: labor, work, and praxis. Back in the late 80s, Jeff told us that he would devote his life work to cultivating the public work associated with the original Democracy Seminar. And in the 3 decades that followed, he has done exactly what he has promised through his extensive writing, speaking, and teaching, and through his indefatigable effort to create and sustain networks of communication that are also networks of collegiality and collaboration, bonds of friendship and of citizenship. Jeff is a public intellectual who is also a nurturer of publics, a speaker always mindful of his audience, and an active listener always seeking to encourage and promote the voices of others in dialogue. We all know how rare this is in the academy and in life. He did this when he created the appropriately named public seminar, and he is doing this now through his more recent efforts to revitalize the very same democracy seminar that he referenced in his 1989 book, and that a number of people have talked about today. I've never known a more generous person than Jeff Goldfarb, ever. And I know a lot of good people, generous people. I have experienced firsthand his intellectual and political generosity in the way that he not simply welcomed me to public seminar, but often, in fact, usually, prioritized the publication of my own relentless, obsessive writing over his own writing, and thus magnified my voice at the expense of his own. And Claire can attest to this because she helped with that. It was like absurd. I would write something every day and send it to Jeff. And he's like, Jeff, read this. We need to publish this. Claire, read this, publish this. And it was, there were months when like public seminar was like my platform. It was never my platform. I don't mean that, but I mean that Jeff, who is a writer and a thinker and a theorist and a scholar, became my facilitator and welcomer. That's pretty extraordinary. It's really, really extraordinary. It's not like I wasn't like nobody before I met him, but still extraordinary. And I'm not the only person for whom this is true. And I think everyone here who knows him could say in some way, that's who he is. And that's what he's been. It's an extraordinary generosity, extraordinary. But it would be wrong for me to end this tribute by implying that Jeff is somehow selfless, for I don't think this is true. And the truth is that Jeff is also a man who is profoundly self-possessed and committed to what he believes. And that's part of the reason why he's such a great discussion leader, moderator, facilitator, and welcomer, because he knows who he is. He doesn't have to prove it to himself all the time. He doesn't have to be the loudest voice or have the last word. I'm not sure we're alike in that way. I think maybe we're.
That was a very nice last word.
I should stop now? Is that it?
No.
Oh, okay. His generosity, both political and personal, is grounded in a rare and indeed extraordinary combination of modesty and self-confidence that makes him an indispensable colleague, an exceptional leader, and a genuine pleasure to be around. In all of his capacities as a father, husband, teacher, colleague, fellow citizen, and friend, Jeff both personifies and enacts what Hannah Arendt called amor mundi, love of the world. And part of the reason why he retired from his teaching position, while obviously he's still working and laboring with the help of Lala and the collaboration of Elzbieta and others. And I think Lala does a lot of the labor. Yeah. And yeah. Jeff is doing the praxis and she's doing, yeah, okay, whatever. She does praxis too. She does. Part of the reason why he retired is to make a space for someone else. I mean, I talked to him about this. And by the way, I don't know anyone else who's done this. I won't do this. He did it. He really did. Democracy Seminar will no doubt flourish in new ways. The things that Jeff creates, the networks he's created, the people he's influenced, they are kind of living, breathing testaments to him. And he's very much around. He's our friend. He's still here. And he's made our world a better place, and he will continue to do so. And we're all the better for it. So thank you.